My name is Alec, and I've just decided to completely change my life. Bought a piece of land where I'm going to build a house for myself and my son. On this channel, I'll show you the entire process of building a wooden house, talk about the costs, and share the challenges I'll face along the way. I hope these videos will inspire someone else to follow an equally crazy dream. After draining the holes and preparing the forms for the footings, it was finally time to build the forms for the individual piers. As a reminder, there are 37 of them. That's enough to justify setting up a production line. But first, the design. There's nothing better than a well-thought-out plan. This is what the pier form looks like, including how it will be installed in the ground. I decided to use cardboard concrete form tubes. These are heavy-duty cardboard tubes with the right diameter and wall thickness, commonly sold in large DIY stores. The problem is that they're quite expensive, at least 10 euros per meter. I need 37 meters of them, and that's simply more than I'm willing to pay. A cheapskate always finds a way. Well, this one did. I bought the tubes for just 3 euros per meter. How is that possible? Because I didn't buy tubes made specifically for construction. I bought waste products from a printing company. Large format printing presses can print thousands of pages every hour. To keep them running, they use enormous rolls of paper made to fit each machine. A single printing house can go through several of these rolls every day. Just imagine how much storage space all those empty cores would take up. The smarter printing companies turn their waste into a product, and that's how I got my form tubes for 1/3 of the usual price. Boom, success. Now, back to the production line. The first thing I did was cut off a short section of tube to use as a cutting guide. It makes cutting a perfectly straight line around a round tube much easier. Next, I had to build a wooden frame to hold the tube over the hole. The following step was making the waterproof collar. At first, I simply cut an X in the plastic sheet, but I immediately realized it wasn't the best solution. Still, every good idea has to start somewhere. Now came the installation process. First, I positioned the frame and tube over the hole, then stabilized everything using another frame anchored into the ground. Once everything was in place, all that remained was leveling the tube and fastening it permanently. Done. Only 36 more to go. Since the prototype worked exactly as intended, it was time to start the formwork factory. Everything was cut from 4-meter battens. Before I started, I carefully worked out how to arrange all the required lengths to minimize waste. There are online applications that calculate the most efficient cutting layout. You simply enter the dimensions and quantities you need, and the software tells you how to cut full boards with the least amount of waste. I didn't use one. I actually enjoy solving puzzles like that. I'd rather figure it out myself. Of course, I kept changing tasks so I wouldn't die of boredom. Sure, I could have saved some time by cutting all the battens first, then all the tubes, and then all the collars. But how long can you repeat exactly the same task before you lose your mind? Let's appreciate the people who work on assembly lines. It's mentally exhausting. Eventually, I came up with a much better design for the waterproof collar. Instead of cutting an X, I cut a circular opening slightly smaller than the outside diameter of the tube. The plastic stretches just enough to grip the tube tightly, so there's no need to glue or tape it at all. Boom, success. As soon as I had a few finished forms, I couldn't resist installing them. After all, that's what I built them for. Besides, it gave me a good excuse to leave the workbench. I get bored staying in one place for too long. That's exactly why I loved working on film sets. We were constantly changing locations. Every day brought new challenges, and I met different people all the time. Editing films was much more tiring. Eventually, I had to ask for help because I decided to order ready-mix concrete. Originally, I planned to mix it myself. How hard could it be? All I needed was 3 grades of aggregate, sand, cement, water, and a concrete mixer. Unfortunately, reality had other plans. Buying all the raw materials and mixing everything myself turned out to be significantly more expensive. Not to mention the electricity and the time it would have taken. So I ordered ready-mix concrete. Problem solved. The holes drilled through clay still contained water at the bottom. They were simply too deep for me to remove it. Clay doesn't allow water to drain away, so it couldn't soak into the ground. Sunlight never reaches that depth either, so evaporation wasn't an option. Leaving the water there was risky. Eventually it could find its way into the surrounding soil, leaving an empty void beneath a very heavy concrete pier. So I decided to stabilize it with cement. A friend welded a mixing paddle onto the end of a long SDS drill extension. Using a rotary hammer, I mixed cement into the wet sludge at the bottom of each hole. I can't honestly say the drill appreciated the experience. Spinning a mixing paddle almost 2 meters long wasn't exactly what it had signed up for. If I didn't hold it perfectly straight, it vibrated so violently that I could barely keep it under control. Every bearing inside it sounded like it was begging for mercy. Well, that's the fate of inexpensive tools. The whole operation consumed 6 bags of cement. It's not a huge expense, but it definitely belongs on the list of losses caused by the flood. While my friends kept cutting formwork parts and tying reinforcement cages, I concentrated on positioning the forms in the ground. It's extremely precise work. I wouldn't trust anyone else to do it. Only I'm accurate. Only I'm precise. Only me. Only me. Well, I suppose that's how the mental condition known as perfectionism begins. I think I'm starting to notice the first symptoms. The tubes inside the garage are taller than all the others. That's because the finished ground level inside the garage will be much higher than underneath the house. The garage will simply have paving blocks, while the house will sit on 2 layers of floor joists. Either way, the garage forms have to be much taller. That also meant building a separate set of batter boards specifically for the garage supports. Next came the batter boards for positioning the post bases that I plan to embed directly into the fresh concrete. These supports have to be absolutely perfect. Not only do they all need to be exactly the same height, they also have to line up perfectly. After all, they'll be supporting the floor joists, and timber joists don't bend like rubber. Here's the final result. It's hard to believe, but almost a month has passed since the storm. That single flood delayed the project by at least 2 weeks. It was definitely a test of character. I'd like to think I passed. The last job remaining was reinforcing the footings. The piers already received the reinforcement cages I had prepared earlier. For the footings, however, I had to use whatever steel I still had left. Do you remember those footing forms I built exactly according to the plans? The ones that turned out to be too small? Well, I'd already made reinforcement grids for them too. I wasn't about to spend money on reinforcing mesh like most people probably would. Instead, I connected those grids together using the leftover rebar still lying around the construction site. The result looked like a tangled mess. But I'm convinced it's far stronger than ordinary reinforcing mesh. Remember when I told you I'd bought 10,000 tie wires? Well, that's where they all disappeared. I tied the reinforcement together like there was no tomorrow. I wanted the whole structure to be absolutely bulletproof. Speaking of tie wire, I recently heard that the European Union has introduced new regulations. Apparently, because steel production consumes precious oxygen, reinforcement should now be tied together using plastic cable ties instead. Isn't it wonderful that producing millions of plastic zip ties is apparently so much better for the environment? What would we ever do without our beloved European commissioners looking after us? I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed to my channel, gave this video a thumbs up, or shared it with your friends. See you in the next episode.